I slammed my coffee cup down and froze. There it was again. Her shiny black SUV, perfectly parked across my driveway like it belonged there. Not once, not twice, but 3 mornings in a row. And of course it wasn't just any neighbor. It was HOA Karen. The same woman who had a PhD in meddling and a minor in making everyone's life miserable. But this time she had outdone herself. Her kid, a smug teenager with a brand new Porsche, had decided my spot was his personal playground. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. That worked for exactly 30 seconds. 30 seconds until I tried to reverse out and scraped the front bumper against her SUV. My patience? Gone. My anger? Somewhere between boiling and nuclear. It wasn't just about parking. It was about respect. Every morning, I fought with her entitled family over something as simple as a place to park. I thought about calling the HOA, but let's be honest. Karen was the HOA. Any complaint would have bounced back on me with a lecture about community rules or some absurd fine. Needed a plan that would teach them a lesson without landing me in a lawsuit. Something unforgettable. Something that would make them think twice before touching my driveway again. That evening, I watched the Porsche through my living room window. It gleamed under the streetlights like it was mocking me. And then, the idea hit me, a plan so simple, yet so satisfying, that I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of it sooner. I would give her son a taste of karma. A parking lesson he and his mother would never forget. I spent the night researching, drawing diagrams, and calculating the perfect accidental inconvenience that would make the Porsche unusable for at least a few days. I double-checked every angle to make sure it wouldn't hurt anyone physically. Because I'm not a criminal, I'm a master of calculated chaos. By morning I had every step mapped out, and then it began. The first move in a plan that would shake the HOA to its core. I smiled to myself as I imagined the look on Karen's face when she realized the consequences of her family's arrogance. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, heart racing with anticipation. Today was the day my plan would begin. I stepped outside, surveying the driveway and the surrounding area. Everything had to be perfect. Timing, placement, and execution. One wrong move and it could all backfire. But after 3 mornings of passive-aggressive notes, honking and pleading, I was done waiting. First, I needed to make sure her son's Porsche would be the star of the lesson without anyone else getting hurt. I grabbed some simple tools, wheel chocks, a set of ropes, and a few harmless but strategically placed obstacles. Nothing dangerous, just enough to immobilize the car temporarily. It had to be dramatic, satisfying, and most importantly, legal enough to avoid criminal charges. I waited, watching the streetlights flicker off as the neighborhood slowly woke up. Then I saw it. The familiar gleam of the Porsche turning the corner. Confidence practically radiating from the car. Her son parked without even a glance at my driveway, as if he owned the place. That smug grin on his face fueled every ounce of patience I'd lost over the past week. I moved quickly but carefully. Rope in hand, I secured the wheel chocks behind the tires, making sure they were hidden from casual view. A few extra ropes around the car ensured that when he tried to leave, he'd be gently but firmly immobilized. I double-checked everything, stepping back to admire my work. It was subtle, effective, and perfectly harmless if handled responsibly. Then came the hard part, watching and waiting. I stayed hidden just far enough to witness the moment of realization. And sure enough, it didn't take long. Her son slid into the driver's seat, pressed the accelerator, and nothing. The car didn't budge. Panic flashed across his face as he slammed the brakes, checked the gear shift, and realized he was trapped. I could hear Karen shouting from the sidewalk, but I stayed silent, letting them figure it out themselves. The lesson wasn't about yelling or threats. It was about consequences, and this consequence was immediate, undeniable, and entirely preventable if they had just respected my property. By the time they finally called me, fuming and demanding answers, I was calm, collected, and ready. I had every excuse, every alibi prepared, and I delivered my response with an innocent smile that made her blood boil. It wasn't about revenge. It was about teaching a lesson in respect, something she clearly hadn't mastered in her years of HOA tyranny. The Porsche remained immobilized long enough for them to feel the frustration of helplessness, and I knew that once this morning ended, they would think twice before ever blocking my driveway again. By mid-morning, the neighborhood had started noticing the commotion. People peeked from windows and peeked over fences, whispering and pointing at the immobile Porsche. Her son was stomping around, trying everything to get it moving, while Karen's voice pierced the air like a foghorn, demanding answers and blaming anyone and everyone except herself. I stayed calm, sipping my coffee from the porch, acting like an innocent bystander. The truth was, I was loving every second. This wasn't just about her son's car anymore. It was about Karen's reputation in the neighborhood. For years, she had run around like a self-appointed queen, enforcing rules nobody asked for and bullying anyone who dared cross her. Today, the tables had turned, and she had no idea how to regain control. Her son tried calling her, panicking as he realized that no amount of whining would fix the problem. Karen stormed over, face red, hair perfectly styled but practically vibrating with anger. "What did you do?" she shouted. Her voice carried the kind of authority only an HOA tyrant could wield, or at least, try to. I walked out casually, hands in pockets, smiling politely. "I didn't do anything," I said. "Maybe it's just one of those mornings?" My tone was light, almost teasing, but underneath it, there was the unmistakable weight of control. I could see her struggling to maintain composure. Every fiber of her being screamed for retaliation. But she didn't have the leverage anymore. For once she was powerless, and it showed. Her son tried again to start the Porsche, but the ropes and chocks held firm. Karen's fury shifted from me to him, which was almost poetic. She yelled, demanded answers, and threatened to call the police. But everyone around had already started whispering about the morning spectacle. By the time the HOA would have gotten involved, the damage to her image was already done. I leaned casually against the railing, letting her simmer. Finally, after endless threats and a few failed attempts at intimidation, she realized she couldn't fix this without admitting she'd lost. Karen had no idea how to handle a situation where her rules didn't apply. And in that moment, I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that my message was clear. My driveway, my rules. By the time they drove off later that day, finally towing the Porsche away, there was a different energy in the neighborhood. I'd become the unspoken authority. Karen might still hold her HOA title, but her power? Gone. And her son? Well, he would think twice before parking in my spot ever again. The next morning, the street was unusually quiet. Neighbors peeked out of their windows, curious to see if the drama had ended, or if there was more chaos coming. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, surveying my driveway. It was clear, today, Karen would learn that control could never be forced through intimidation alone. Her son appeared first, looking noticeably humbled. The confidence that had radiated from him the week before was gone, replaced by hesitancy. He parked well away from my driveway, as if a simple glance at the space reminded him of the consequences of arrogance. Karen, of course, followed, hoping to assert her authority once again. But I could see the shift in her posture, the tension in her shoulders, the frustration she was barely able to mask. I waved politely, smiling as though nothing had happened. "Good morning," I said. Simple words, yet heavy with the silent message. Respect comes from actions, not entitlement. She flinched at my calm demeanor, realizing that her usual intimidation tactics would no longer work. The neighbors watched in quiet amusement, clearly noticing the power dynamic had shifted. Karen tried one last attempt to reclaim her influence. She raised her voice, spouting some rules about community parking, HOA fines, and so-called neighborly respect. But it was hollow. Everyone knew the truth. She had lost her grip. Her son's Porsche incident had exposed the fragility of her control, and even she couldn't maintain the facade of authority in front of the people who had endured her antics for years. I leaned against the porch railing, sipping my coffee, and simply nodded. My driveway was my space, and today that was obvious to everyone, including Karen. Her son, still embarrassed but now wiser, finally muttered an apology for blocking the spot in the past. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it carried weight. I accepted it with a small smile, signaling that lessons could be learned without unnecessary conflict, but only if respect was given. By the afternoon, normalcy had returned. Karen retreated to her house, fuming quietly, while her son stayed distant from my driveway. The neighborhood buzzed quietly with whispered commentary and laughter. I had accomplished more than just reclaiming a parking spot. I had restored order, earned respect, and demonstrated that entitlement could be challenged successfully. From that day on, my driveway remained mine. No more Porsche intrusions, no more passive-aggressive notes, no more HOA terror. And Karen? She learned that power enforced through fear is fleeting. Respect is earned through fairness. And if you fail to uphold it, even the loudest tyrant can be humbled. Sometimes, a simple parking spot can teach a life lesson. And today, my driveway was proof. Thanks for watching. If you loved seeing Karen get her lesson, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any wild HOA stories. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would do if this happened to you. And don't forget to smash that like button if you want more epic revenge stories.